What's up everyone, it's Ryan here from Green Tech Network. It's been quite a while since my last video review. However, I just recently got the new HTC 10 and I'm a big fan of the phone. I really like it, and I figured I'd put out a quick video review of it for all of you YouTubers out there. For those who don't know what the HTC 10 is, it's essentially HTC's new flagship phone that has all of the top-of-the-line hardware that's currently available. It was released in early May of 2016, and it's designed to compete with the LG G5 and the Samsung Galaxy S7 and Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge. Starting off with the design, you can see that HTC decided to continue their line of aluminum build phones. This one has three main pieces: the back, the top, and the bottom. In addition to that, it also has a lot of symmetry, which I kind of like. You can see the audio or the headphone jack is directly in the middle on the top. The camera is directly in the middle on the rear portion of the phone, and the charging port is directly on the bottom. The other nice thing about the design is that the power button and volume button are both right next to each other, so you can basically press them both by holding it with your right hand. You can essentially reach all of the buttons at once. Whereas I'm coming from the HTC One M7, which had the power button up on the top. So you'd have to unlock it up top, and then if you want to switch the volume, you'd have to move your hands, which was kind of a pain. In addition, they also followed some symmetry with the SIM card slot, which is right here on the right, and then the micro SD card slot, which is right here on the left. Following in suit with most of the other flagship phones, the HTC 10 has a fingerprint scanner, which is located right down here, and I have it set to both of my thumbs, my right and my left. I believe you can set up to 5 fingerprints total, so you can also do index fingers if you want to, but I just have it, and it works pretty well for me. Sometimes if you have your thumb at like a really strange angle, like you pull it out of your pocket and you're like just on the edge, it'll say cover the scanner completely, which it says right there. So you just cover it completely and it works fine. Moving on to the speakers, I do have to say that the audio quality is incredible for a phone and such small speakers. The one thing that I do miss from my HTC One M7, and I believe the One M8 and One M9 also had this, was the 2 front-facing speakers. I believe the reason they didn't have 2 front-facing speakers on the 10 is because of the fingerprint scanner, which gets kind of in the way. So what's interesting is they have this speaker up here, which is essentially what you're listening to when you're on the phone with someone. This handles basically the high range of the audio, so it essentially acts as a tweeter. And then this down here handles mainly the bass and mid-range, so it's kind of like a subwoofer, if you want to call it that. But overall, the audio quality it goes pretty loud for a small phone, and it also has pretty good quality for being such small speakers. For the screen, HTC opted for the 5.2-inch Super LCD 5. It's a Quad HD screen, which means it has a resolution of 1440 by 2560, which that results in, due to the size of it, a pixel per inch density of 565. It does have the Gorilla Glass 4, which is pretty tough glass. It is prone to shattering though, since it is glass. I know some other phones are starting to use a kind of a plastic polymer derivative that isn't prone to cracking, but is prone to scratching. I do have, it's kind of hard to see on here, but I do have the a screen cover. It's just like it was like one of the cheap ones that came with Verizon. You can see it bubbles up on the edges a little bit, but it's pretty clear, the one I got from Verizon, so I don't have any complaints. And then obviously, like I said, the screen, I guess if you want to call it that, includes the fingerprint scanner, and what's nice is that it has a physical back button, which a lot of phones these days I feel like don't actually have physical back buttons. So some of them you have to like swipe up, oops, open my messages. Some of them you have to swipe up and then hit back, but I do really like how you can simply press back if you want to go back, and then also this opens up recent apps and has the Google search bar up there if you press that button as well. And you get to see how much money I have. In terms of performance, this is a flagship phone, obviously, so it's going to have some of the best technology available on the market. It has the Snapdragon 820 by Qualcomm. This has a 64-bit quad-core CPU, which is pretty impressive for a phone. and it also includes the Adreno 530 GPU, which is kind of the flagship GPU currently. I've run a few benchmarks with Antutu and 3D Mark, and 3D Mark, it was pretty impressive to watch it render such impressive graphics for a phone in real time, which was I really like that. I don't really use it for a whole lot of gaming. The only gaming I use it for is Hearthstone, and it handles that pretty much flawlessly. There are some a little bit of like loading times between games, and if you want to, if you go to like your card collection, it takes about a second or two for it to load. But I do have to admit, it looks really nice on the Quad HD screen. It's super crisp, and Hearthstone properly scales. In addition to that, it also has 4 gigabytes of RAM, which is a lot for a cell phone. That's also similar to most of the other flagship phones currently. However, I've noticed with such a large amount of RAM, you can pretty much have as many applications as open as at a time as you want, and there's virtually no lag whatsoever. I've had at least 20 different applications open, and everything is super fluid, super quick, and very responsive. Inside the HTC 10, there's a 3 amp hour battery. I've noticed so far that the battery life is pretty good. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 820 works pretty well with managing proper power consumption and ensuring that it's not running at 100% optimization all the time. It does have USB Type-C, which I'm a huge fan of. Let's see if I can get it to focus on the little port down here. There you go. Fully reversible, for those who don't know. USB Type-C has a lot of advantages over micro USB and even like the Lightning port on iPhones. It's fully reversible, which micro USB is not, Lightning is. But it supports a large amount of power, so that's why you see the new MacBook has the USB Type-C. And it also supports a pretty high amount of bandwidth or file transfer, data transfer, whatever you want to call it, which is really nice. And main reason I opted for this phone was because of the USB Type-C. I kind of wanted it to be future-proof as much as a cell phone can be. So with the USB Type-C and the Snapdragon 820, that means it comes with the Qualcomm Quck Charge 3.0, which doesn't seem to want to focus. But for those who don't know, Qualcomm Quck Charge 3.0 is basically a charging method that is really fast and doesn't tend to heat up your phone a lot. I've noticed it heats up a little bit, but basically the charger has multiple different voltages and currents that it can charge the phone with at once, resulting in an extremely fast charge rate. I'm going to do a quick demonstration with the charger it came with and also some aftermarket chargers in a second. An interesting thing to note is that with the USB Type-C, this phone can actually charge at 3 amps, 5 volts DC. However, the old USB specifications, like the standard USB ports you see on your computer, those are only allowed technically to transfer 2.5 amps at 5 volts DC. So if you want to get the full 3 amps at 5 volts DC, you have to get a charger that has USB Type-C to USB Type-C, which are currently kind of rare. I've seen 1 or 2 on Amazon, mainly by Anker. They're a pretty good charging company. But I only have standard USB chargers, so the maximum they're allowed to provide due to specifications or requirements is 2.5 amps at 5 volts DC. So I'm going to go in real quickly and show you some demonstrations. I'm going to be using the Ampere app, which is a pretty cool app that measures incoming and outgoing power. So you can see right now we're using negative 150 milliamps, and it tells you a bunch of other pretty cool things. But I'm going to go ahead and set up power strip and the HTC charger along with an aftermarket charger and just show you how Quck Charge works on this phone. I've got 2 different chargers here for demonstration purposes. The first one is the one that came in the box with the HTC 10. See if I can get it to focus on the text on the back. So you can see the output. This is Qualcomm Quck Charge 3.0 specifications. The output is 5 volts 2.5 amps or 9 volts 1.7 amps or 12 volts 1.25 amps. So like I said, because this is a standard I guess old school, if you want to call it that, USB port. It's only allowed to supply 2.5 amps max. In addition, I've got, this is it's kind of an older, it's an Anker. I really like their chargers. It's an Anker, just dual USB port charger. Each port here, see if I can get it to focus again. Each port supplies 5 volts DC at 2.5 amps max. So a total power of 5 volts, 4 amps. So you can have 2 phones on this and it'll pull 4 amps, 5 volts DC total. And then this is just the USB Type-C cable that came with my HTC 10 in the box. It's a pretty nice cable. I'd say I believe it's 3.3 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll plug in the OEM HTC cable or charger first. We're just got a little power strip there. So you'll notice that, so once I plug it in, it starts measuring. What's interesting is that it seems to use just a little bit of current at first, and I assume that's between the phone and the charger communicating. So it starts out, 400 milliamps, and then as it continues to measure, it'll start to move up pretty quickly. So there it goes, and then all of a sudden, it jumps up like a crazy amount all at once. So what's interesting I notice is that you can see it says 2.98 amps. The charger's only supposed to supply 2.5. I'm not sure if this reading is due to software errors or if it, just for some reason the phone pulls a little bit extra. Not really sure. It's only supposed to reach 3 amps when you have USB Type-C to USB Type-C. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but the phone charges crazy fast with the standard charger it comes with. I have noticed that if you're using it while the phone's charging with the HTC charger, it does tend to get a little bit warm, which is why I generally use this. The Ampere has like a little notification, so you can monitor your battery temperature there. I've seen it sometimes if I have it like resting on my bed, even if I'm not using it, which the bed's kind of a insulator for heat. It'll reach around 45 degrees Celsius, which is a little too warm in my opinion. Lithium-ion batteries tend to degrade quicker when they're under high heat, and in my opinion 45 degrees Celsius is a little too warm. Probably has a little bit more degradation than I would like. You can see the battery's already starting to heat up a little bit. And then obviously if you're using it while it's charging with this rapid charger, it does tend to get even a little bit more warm. Especially if you're playing games or something like that. So I'll unplug this now. You can see it's pretty much constant at 3 amps. The nice thing is it does charge very fast, so if you're in a certain situation where you need to have your phone charged for the entire day, plug it in there for half an hour, 45 minutes, and you most likely will have a full charge. So this is the Anker charger, and it's supposed to be able to supply 2.4 amps at 5 volts DC. The interesting thing I've noticed, which you'll see in a little bit once this starts to measure, is that it'll kind of max out around 2 amps. It tends to hang out around 1.8 amps, 1.9 amps, which is still pretty fast in my opinion. I've actually noticed myself, I've been using this charger a lot more than the HTC one, just because it doesn't heat up the phone as much, because it's only charging it at 2/3 the speed. So I feel like that helps prolong battery life in the long term, which unfortunately this phone does not have a removable battery. So I'm trying to preserve the battery as long as possible, since there's really no way to change it out, which is, I guess, one of the negatives of this phone, but one of the few negatives. So you can see here it's hitting 1.5 amps right now, and it'll usually go up to around 1.8, 1.9 once you let it sit for a little bit on the charger. But I'm not going to wait for that, it'll probably take a while. So overall, the battery life's really good, like I said. Charging's really, really fast. I guess one of the bad things about Quck Charge 3.0, like I said, it tends to heat up the phone a little bit. And in addition, the chargers are relatively expensive for Quck Charge 3.0, because the charger kind of has to communicate with the phone in order to determine what voltage and current and all of that to supply. So USB Type 3 chargers tend to go for around $25 about on Amazon. And then you can also get, the only company that I know of that has the USB Type-C to USB Type-C is Anchor, and that's on Amazon, I believe, for around $28 or $29. But all in all, pretty good battery life. Moving on to the camera, the HTC 10 does have a really nice camera. Like I said, I'm coming from the One M7, so I'm used to, like, a mediocre camera. I don't know a whole lot about cameras, so I'm not sure if I'm saying any of this right. But the rear camera is 12 megapixels. It has the 1.8 aperture and a 26 millimeter focal length, which is a little bit of a wide-angle lens. What's kind of cool is if you see here this little black spot right there, right below the LEDs, it's a laser autofocus, so it can actually determine the distance between your phone and whatever it's taking a picture of, and therefore get the almost exact focus that it should be on. And then also has, you can see there's two individual LEDs here. They both go off when I'm taking a picture. I've noticed that, at least online, it said that there's dual tone, so I believe one of them is a different color temperature than the other. I can't really see it with my eyes. In terms of video, this phone records 2160p at 30 frames per second, 720p at 120 frames per second, and 1080p at 30 frames per second. I guess one of the negatives is that a lot of phones now are able to record 1080p at 60 frames per second. However, HTC, for whatever reason, opted not to do that. The front camera is 5 megapixel, and it has the same aperture, 1.8. It has a little bit different of a focal length, 23 millimeters, which is also wide angle. And it does support full 1080p recording, which is nice. I don't know why I'd ever want to record a 1080p video of my face. I guess if I'm making some sort of YouTube commentary, maybe. But what's interesting is that both cameras provide the HDR feature, which increases color and contrast and makes the picture look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to go ahead and include in this video some actual shots taken from the HTC 10 in all of the different video methods. And I'm also going to include some pictures as well, just so you can see the picture quality. So, interesting side note, after I filmed with the HTC 10, for some reason, Adobe Premiere Pro can't handle the file extensions, and I've tried re-encoding it with a ton of different formats, and it still won't work, so I'm going to have to upload the videos just straight to YouTube without any sort of editing or anything like that, unfortunately. In terms of memory, the HTC 10 has two different memory sizes available, the 32 gig or the 64 gig. I opted for the 32 gig since it was a little bit cheaper. The thing that I do like about this phone is it has the removable micro SD card, and I guess a lot of previous phones in the past few years haven't had those, and in theory the HTC 10 supports up to 2 terabytes for the micro SD slot. Right now there isn't a 2 terabyte, I don't even think there's a 1 terabyte micro SD card available. So this is all, theoretical. Currently I have a spare 16 gig one laying around. Works just fine, and I do like the ability, if I want to add a decent amount of music, movies, TV shows, etc. I do like the ability to store them on the micro SD card, since it gets kind of expensive to increase the internal memory of a phone. The HTC 10 offers pretty much every form of connectivity available on the market. It has NFC, which is for transferring files, contacts, pictures, videos, etc. between two phones when they're in close proximity with one another. It has Bluetooth 4.2, which is nice, so it reaches very far. My HTC One M7 did not have that, and that was kind of one of the larger downfalls when I would try to play Bluetooth music on a speaker. It has, the standard Wi-Fi A, B, G, and AC, as you'd expect. It offers DisplayPort connectivity, Chromecast, obviously, like pretty much every Android device, DLNA, AirPlay, and Miracast as well. So if you have something it needs to connect to, it's pretty much guaranteed to be able to connect to it, which I really like, since I tend to have a lot of different gadgets and things around the house that all connect wirelessly, and it is really nice to be able to connect to everything right through my phone. Overall, I'm very impressed with the HTC 10. I know HTC has been having a little bit of monetary problems in the past few years. However, I really think they outdid themselves in terms of the style of the phone itself, along with the ample amount of features. And it's definitely a solid competitor for the flagship phone market right now. There are a few downfalls, I guess, if you want to call them that, compared to some of the other flagship phones. So, as many of you probably know, the Galaxy S7 has waterproofing. I believe it can go up to 3 meters underwater for 30 minutes or something along those lines. Unfortunately, this phone is not waterproof whatsoever. So if I were to drop this in a small amount of water, it would probably almost instantly die. However, with the, I guess, lack of waterproofing, it does have the ability to have nicer speakers. I know one of the main problems with the Galaxy S7 that the speakers sound kind of tinny or kind of high pitched. They don't have very good quality, and that's due to the speakers having to be waterproof. In addition, the HTC 10 does not have a removable battery, which is kind of unfortunate, but many phones these days do not. I've noticed that lithium-ion batteries tend to lose around 20% of their capacity over a 2-year lifespan, and that's just kind of standard for any lithium-ion battery, and cell phones no exception. Obviously, the hotter the battery stays, the faster it degrades, which I mentioned with the Quck Charge 3.0. So that's kind of unfortunate. You should expect to see some decrease in battery life if you plan on using the phone for 2 years, which I do. But there's really nothing you can do. There is, I believe, the LG G5, I believe, has some form of removable battery, which is nice. But I do know that the LG G5 has a smaller capacity battery, although it is removable. And I guess one of the other things, it's not really a downfall, I guess, but I remember HTC was partnered with Beats when, I believe it was the HTC Resound, which was way before, that was even before the original HTC One. I think they were partnered for Beats for them, and they had a partnership with Beats also for the original HTC One M7. I'm not sure how long that lasted. I don't believe they have a partnership anymore, as this phone doesn't have HTC. It doesn't have the Beats. It does have some sort of audio boosting. It's called HTC Boom Sound with Dolby Audio, and you can see it. You can change the different settings. And that basically just makes your music and everything sound a little better. It tends to boost the lows and the ultra highs. So it seems like it boosts around 4 kilohertz and above, and then I'd say probably somewhere around 400 hertz and below. It seems like it's kind of hard to tell exactly, but it does make your music sound a little bit nicer. I use the Power Amp app for music, so that's not a really big deal for me because it has a built-in equalizer, which is really nice. Kind of getting distracted, but so my main thing was that the phone no longer, at least mine, did not come with free headphones. That's not really a big deal. I was just kind of looking forward to having some free headphones with it, because the HTC Resound and the One M7 did come with some free lower end headphones that were designed by Beats, I believe. And I personally have higher end Sony headphones, so I didn't really have a use for them. But it was nice because I could just sell them on eBay for $20 or $30 because people would buy them because it has the Beats name on it. But overall, like I said, I've used this phone for probably 5 days now, and it's fantastic. I mean, this is coming from someone who upgraded from the One M7, and I mean that thing was way out of date, super laggy and everything. But I mean this phone I haven't had any problems with. There's already starting to be a market for aftermarket products. So this is a cell phone case. The company's called, it's kind of hard to focus, it's called Tech 21. I bought this straight from Verizon when I pre-ordered the phone itself, and the case is pretty nice. And I looked on Amazon, and there's already starting to be, like I said, a decent amount of aftermarket cases available for the HTC 10, and fits nicely. Pretty much all of them are rated for standard drop protection of either 3 meters or 6 meters. This one's rated for 6 meters, I believe. And And most of the cases I've seen, they tend to have pretty decent styling. Doesn't really take away that much from the original styling. I do miss the beveled edges, obviously, since that's kind of like HTC's standard look for the phone. But overall, there is a decent amount of aftermarket capabilities. And there's also a decent amount of different types of USB Type-C connectors, chargers, etc. One of the things I've noticed about the USB Type-C is that right now there's only one company that I can find on Amazon that sells 6-foot or 2-meter USB Type-C cables, that might have to do with the specifications of the large amount of current required. The only company that I found online currently was Alki, and they sell the 6-foot ones. That's pretty much the only company. Everyone else tends to sell the 3.3 feet or 1 meter cables, which is interesting. But overall, fantastic phone. I highly recommend anyone who's interested in it to go ahead and purchase it. When I did purchase it, Verizon was having a promotion where if you turned in your old phone, they would take $100 off the cost of the HTC 10, which was a pretty solid deal for me because I had the 1M7 with a cracked screen. But like I said, if you're interested, definitely go out and get it. I absolutely love it. I hope you liked the video review. I hope it was helpful, and feel free to like, subscribe, etc. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm probably going to do a follow-up review since I've only had it for a few days, maybe in a few weeks or whatever. And if there's any other problems that arise or kind of bugs or quirky things about it that I've noticed, I'll be sure to mention those. But right now, I'm absolutely in love with it. Thanks for watching.